And welcome to another Lumi Financial Corner. With us once again, Michael Zaremski, head of U.S. Private Banking, Bank Luma USA, member of the Investment Committee for Lumi Investment Services. Michael, good to have you back again.
Good to be back, Zev. How are you today?
Good, thank God. Thank God. We live in interesting and challenging times.
Absolutely.
In the weeks prior, Michael, we've talked about the market and going up and down. So I just want to change focus for our broadcast now. Let's look at the asset allocation of one's household wealth. Let's look at the do's and don'ts.
I think it's a great topic, Zev, particularly as you mentioned, with a lot of the churning we've seen in the market and a lot of the recent volatility. And let me just first say that the comments reflected in today's discussion are mine, not necessarily those of the bank or the broker dealer. But I would just share some thoughts that I typically have with a lot of our clients. And I think so many times people get very focused on kind of an overall asset allocation, or they look at an overall big picture view. And what I try to remind everybody, and what I try to live in my own personal investment world, is this concept of compartmentalizing my risk buckets. It sounds like a complicated term, but it's really rather quite simple. And instead of worrying about my overall wealth, so if I had $100, I'm not really worried about how I've allocated my $100. What I'm really going to look at is to say, of that $100, what are my uses, what are my needs, and what buckets are those $100 allocated into? There's some element of my life which is kind of my operating account. So, what do we need for the monthly bills? What do we need for all the daily expenses? And as aggressive as I may be in a lot of my longer term investments, I recognize that part of the portfolio has to be very short term oriented and very safety oriented, because I'm using that on a kind of weekly, monthly basis to pay bills. And then gradually, as we get further out into the risk buckets, whether it's a savings account, whether it's a rainy day slush fund, whether it's long-term retirement planning, whether it's 529 plans for college education, or trust funds for children, etc., we really need to take a different reassessment of what's the need, use, objective of those pockets of money, and then basically think through how do we want to allocate within those buckets. And I think what's really important about it is, at the end of the day, my overall asset allocation is really going to be a residual of the roll-up of all those buckets. And generally speaking, the more wealth I accumulate, the more I'm going to fill up the first elements of the buckets. So again, I won't be living paycheck to paycheck, but as I start to fill out further and further buckets, generally speaking, I should be able to be a little bit more risky on the back end of my portfolio in the more longer term elements, so that I can generate more return in those riskier buckets, if you will.
So, in other words, you have to be on top of the situation. You have bucket lists, and you have to be careful and assess and look at a whole different range of things, right?
Absolutely, and I think that gets really challenging in today's world. And so many times we're being bombarded with the concept of, you can get everything from for free for robo advisors, or where do you want to spend your money, and thinking about your investment solutions. And this is also one of the areas where we really encourage a lot of our clients to really think about having a financial advisor, putting together a financial plan with an investment professional to really help guide you in all those disciplines and all those buckets. For somebody who may be naturally very conservative, you really need to hear from a professional in terms of gauging the advice of what to do with your longer term money, where you probably should be more aggressive. For somebody who has more of a natural inclination to be more aggressive with money, again, building strategies around what you need to do for the short term, what you need to do for your core investments, and then maybe allowing for sleeves of what percentage of assets you can truly be risky in, and make more, day trade if you want. Really speaking with someone, getting someone to help put together that plan, so you can compartmentalize all those different components and think about all those components individually. So again, when you roll it all up together, you're in a good position to kind of achieve your lifetime planning needs.
But I like what you're saying. You diversify. There's certain parts where you can take more risks, and certain parts you can be more conservative. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's a combination.
Exactly, and I think diversification in that term and people diversification typically in terms of, I own more than 10 stocks or 20 stocks, so I'm diversified. But I think that you need to be focused on diversifying by risk, diversifying securities, diversifying by strategies. In a lot of cases, it's diversifying out into the world of possibly trust and estate planning. So again, I think that there's a lot of different packets and components of the investment portfolio. And I think it's very important to align yourself properly in each of the buckets with what your needs are, what your objectives are. As I said, I would highly encourage people to be engaged with financial planners and financial advisors to really help set some of those goals, terms, so that everybody can be properly guided on what their career path is.
Very, very good advice, especially if people take stock in what their investment portfolios are. And it always pays to look, and as you said, to have a professional on board will only enhance your experience. Michael Zaremski, head of U.S. Private Banking,
Yep.
Bank Leumi USA, member investment committee for Leumi Investment Services. Thank you for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Zev. Thank you very much.
And we're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.